So we will start the prayer then. Lama dang gombo jizu jambe yang la gube cha ca lo. Kange lo ju jim nye jin jala nye da nam da rab sa be. Chi nye den gu chi shen si jire. Nye ge tu gara le bam zin. Kanda sibe zunrara mare mendo dunga kisrebe Zozo gunla puje darze ye la chuchu yande sum Zodara chejo nyemo nyelo lege chajo zoze jing Mare minse dunga nyugu chi nye cheze raje nam Dene dajin saji tarse Yende lunzo gyase tuwu ku Chucha judan juni genje Dalu minse jambe yang lai Zeden kege kera vesegi dalu temo memba rapsalane gadan tenche shonlo doba yin leje bobe nawa zadu solo Yugi Jan Sa Be Mai Kesara Dombo Lam Yan Tse Chogi Ngeju Nye Be Mai June She Su Cha Kordo Kanje Mambu Koro Kegi Jesu Da Jogi Chingi Labchiri Shesu Solo Guru Beman Sidi Hong Ogen Yogi Nukchan Tsa Bemai Kesara Dombo Lam Yansen Chogi Ngeju Nye Bema June Shesu Ta Kordo Kanje Mambe Koro Kegi Jesu Dan Jogi Chingi Labchi Shesu Solo Guru Bema Sidi Hong Ogen Yugi Nupchan Tsan Bema Kesara Dombo Lam Yansen Chogi Ngeju Nye Bema June Shesu Cha Kordo Kanje Mambo Koro Kigi Jesu Dan Jogi Chingi Labji Shesu Solo Guru Bema Sidi Hong Oma Hong Benza Guru Bema Sidi Hong Oma Hong Benza Guru Bema Sidi Om Ho Benza Guru Bema Sidi Hong Om Ho Benza Guru Bema Sidi Om Ho Benza Guru Bema Sidi Hong Om Menzang Guru Pema Sede Hong Gewa Di Nyurdo Da Mahan Guru Drugyuru Ne Drowa Jigyam Malipa Teye Salam Gebara Sho. Greetings to everyone. So today we will be speaking about Refuge, which is the second chapter in the clarifying the sage's intent. And so before we start the actual teaching, to give like a little introduction to what the refuge is all about. Basically, what we need to know is that, as we all know, there is something called the three jewels, also known as the triple gem in Buddhism. And this is something similar to what we have when we travel. When we travel to a country, a foreign country, for example, we need a guide. It is best if we have a guide, and also we need to actually tread the path, actually travel. And then we also need a travel companion. And if we have all of these three, if all of these three come together, then whatever our aim is, if it's like, for example, if it's traveling, then we will safely arrive at the destination. So likewise, when it comes to the Buddhism, the Buddhist practice of taking refuge, it is something similar, because when we take refuge in the three jewels, we are able to attain different goals based on the different aims of the different practitioners in Buddhism.
这个第二品，在开始说之前，我们先给大家介绍一下关于皈依的内容。大家都知道佛教里说的三宝，佛教里说的三宝就像旅行当中的一个例子也一样。比如说，我们想要到国外去旅行，最好就是我们有一个向导，然后有我们真正要旅行当中要走的道路，然后还要有一个驴友，有一个道友。如果三者都皆有的话，那不管我们的目的地在哪里，我们都会安全的到达。同样的，在佛教里面，我们皈依三宝之后，就可以根据每个人修行不同的目的，安全的到达不同的目的地。
So when we speak of the three jewels, we speak of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what the Buddha is someone that has abandoned all faults, that is endowed with all the good qualities, and also someone who does not teach the Dharma in a wrong way, who has no flaws in teaching.
Hello, could you hear me?
No, I cannot hear you.
Oh. Sorry, would you mind repeating the first part, please? It got cut off.
So when we speak of the Buddha, so we have the three jewels, which are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So the Buddha is how we should understand that is someone that is free from all faults, who has abandoned all faults, and is endowed with all the good qualities, and also someone that does not teach the Dharma in the wrong way, who has no flaws in teaching the Dharma.
佛宝来说，佛陀就是灭除了一切 一切的坏，佛陀也具有所有的功德，也不会也不会把也会正确的教导佛法。
And when we speak of the Dharma, the purpose of the Dharma is that to the Dharma, we are able to abandon all of the defilements and the suffering that we have.
断除一切所有的烦恼以及所有的痛苦。
And also to the Dharma, one is able to attain future good rebirths and also attain liberation.
证到善趣，也可以得到正悟。
And when we speak of the Sangha, it is the practitioners who follow the Buddha and who practice the Dharma. And in this case, for example, when we speak of the Mahayana refuge, it is the Bodhisattvas.
就是指跟随佛陀修法的人，在大乘佛教当中，这些就指的是佛菩萨。
So when we speak of taking a refuge, we have to accept that the Buddha is the guide who shows us the path, and then the Dharma is the actual path which needs to be practiced, and then the Sangha is our practice companions.
作为我们的向导，我们法宝作为我们要所修的道路，以及僧宝作为我们修行的道友。
So the refuge, there are many different refuges, ways of refuge. There are non-Buddhist refuge, there are worldly refuges, which is the worldly ways of taking refuge, which are not exactly Buddhist refuge. And then there are also the Buddhist refuge, and many kinds of refuge that will be mentioned shortly.
角度来说，有世间的皈依以及出世间的皈依，我们之后都会一一介绍。
So when we speak of taking refuge, we need to have the refuge vow. We need to just taking refuge by yourself is not enough for the beginner. I mean, for the first time, when you enter, when you become a Buddhist, when you enter Buddhism, or when you become a Buddhist, you first need to receive the refuge vow from a teacher. And once that is done, then you can take refuge by yourself every day as much as you want. But for the first time, we need to receive the actual, we need to go to the refuge ceremony. What I'm talking about is to the refuge ceremony and then receive the refuge vow. And then after we receive the refuge vow, then we can practice the practices of refuge and all the following practices.
关于受皈依戒的话，我们自己自受皈依戒是不够的。想要成为佛教徒的话，就先要在圣知识面前受皈依戒，需要去参加正式的仪式来受皈依戒。从此以后就可以自己修行，自己受戒。
So we need to receive the refuge vow. However, like first, before we receive the refuge vow, we also need to have a good understanding of what refuge is all about, because it is the first step in the practice of the Buddha Dharma. So therefore, we need to first have a good understanding. So therefore, we will first speak of what refuge is all about.
在正式受皈依戒之前，我们首先要了解什么是皈依戒。所以在我们今天开始说之前，先要了解一下什么是皈依。
So you can show the slides now.
然后我们现在转播到 PPT。
So it says second is taking refuge. So as we already completed the first one, the first chapter is spiritual potential. So therefore, this is the second, which is taking refuge. So it says the second key phrase quoted from the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, appreciating the Dharma, refers to taking refuge to gain appreciation for this teaching. To explain this, there are four main topics: identifying the essence of taking refuge, determining its nature, the rules to be observed for taking refuge, and the benefits of following such rules. So what this means is that earlier it mentioned, for the second chapter, it mentioned appreciation of the Dharma. I believe it didn't mention taking refuge, but appreciation of the Dharma itself is actually taking refuge. It speaks about taking refuge. So earlier, if you looked at in the beginning of the clarifying the sage's intent, it says second, appreciating Dharma. So that is taking refuge in this case.
我们现在开始正式说，第二品之前的第一品已经说完了，在第二品的内容当中，这场 PPT 当中上面已经显示的内容我就不再重复。之前我们在第一品的当中时候提到过，真诚的从内心深处承诺皈依三宝，以及依止三宝，也就是这里指的皈依。
And so there are, as it mentions here, there are four topics that are going to be mentioned about refuge. And the first is identifying the essence of taking refuge. So what that means is that it speaks about what refuge, what does it mean? What does taking refuge, you could say literally mean?
首先，第一个就是认识皈依的本质。具体来说，就是了解到底什么是皈依，来了解皈依的本性是什么。
And then the second is determining its nature. So it speaks about in great detail about what refuge is all about.
第二点就是了解皈依的类别以及皈依的差别，也就是全方位的了解皈依里面具体的内容。
And then the rules to be observed for taking refuge is this third topic. It speaks about once you take refuge, what are you supposed to do? What can you do? What should you do? And what you should not do?
第三个就是皈依的学处或者是戒律，也就是说了解皈依了之后什么可以做，什么不可以做。
And the fourth and the last one is and the benefits of following such rules. So that is, it speaks of what kind of benefits, such as the temporary and ultimate benefits that arise from taking refuge. It speaks about that.
第四个就是皈依的功德，也就是说皈依了之后有什么暂时与究竟的功德。
And then the next slide. So this is the first one, identifying the essence of taking refuge. This has two parts. The definition of taking refuge is the, let's see. Just a minute. So yeah, it says the first is identifying the essence of taking refuge. So what does refuge, taking refuge mean? And it says it has two parts. The first is so the definition of taking refuge. So what that is that it says the affirmation of your adherence to the highest object. So that is what taking refuge means. It means to sort of offer yourself, offer your self to something that is superior to yourself, something that is better than yourself, and something or someone that can help you.
首先第一部分就是说，了解皈依的本质当中的里面的第一部分就是了解皈依的性相。皈依的定义的话，就是说我们坚决的依靠一个殊胜的对象，或者是说我们依止一个殊胜对境的承诺，依止一个比我们更好、比我们更高的一个对境。
And it basically means putting yourself in their care, whoever it may be, something or someone that is superior to oneself.
也就是说，我们把我们自己完全的托付给一个更殊胜的对境，一个比我们更好的一个对境。
And secondly, we have the Sanskrit etymology, I guess. So the Sanskrit etymology is as follows. The Sanskrit words Sharanam Gacchami mean I go for refuge. It is called refuge because it protects. You speak of going because you approach in order to resort to it. So basically, the word for I go for refuge in Sanskrit is Sharanam Gacchami. So that is what it says.
第二部分里面就是说皈依的这个词的这个具体的意思。在梵文里面，这个词的意思就是救护的意思，或者是说我们依止三宝的话，就是为了得到三宝的保护，依其而行。
You might hear maybe Thai or Sri Lankan or maybe Indian Buddhists, if they are, recite, when they go for refuge, they are recited as Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami, which is I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha. So basically, Sharanam Gacchami means I go for refuge.
我们在斯里兰卡或者印度的话，经常能听到说皈依佛、皈依法、皈依僧，也就是说得到佛法僧的救护的意思。
So we call it refuge, go for refuge or taking refuge. I think we'll use go for refuge. So refuge, the reason why it is called refuge is because it protects from harm. It says it protects. So what it protects is it protects from harm and also suffering.
这里说的救护的意思，也就是说能够，就是三宝能够解救我们远离种种的损害以及错误的修行的道路。
So that is why it is called refuge. And then we have going. So we say going for refuge. So going, what that means is it basically means to approach in order to resort to it, which means to accept it, to accept the refuge as your, protector, something like that.
依其而行里面的就是说里面的前半部分是去靠近或者是去接受佛法僧，他的意思就是说我们去接受佛法僧的救护，或者是对我们的保护。
As is also said in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, as it is also said, yes, and then it says, it is the supreme refuge because it protects from all harms, the view of a substantial personality, the Hinayana, ineffective methods, and the miserable destinies. So that is why it is called a refuge. So there are several reasons that are mentioned in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras of why it is known as refuge.
在屏幕上显示的这个《大乘经庄严论》里面的颂词，就是解释了为什么说佛法僧三宝是我们的依护。
So basically, 5 kinds of difficulties are mentioned here. The first is all harms. The second is the view of a substantial personality. The third is the Hinayana. The fourth is the ineffective methods. And the fifth is the miserable destinies. So if you rely on the refuge, which is in this case is the 3 jewels, then it will protect you from all of these. It will help you avoid all of these 5 difficulties.
我们皈依三宝的话，就是能够保护我们远离这5种伤害，就是宋词里面解释的，比如说是低劣尘，或者是无法，或者是恶趣中的。
So it says it protects. So the protect needs to be joined. When you understand it, it needs to be joined with each of these 5. So it protects from all harms. It protects from a substantial personality, the view of a substantial personality. It protects from the Hinayana. It protects from the ineffective methods, and it protects from the miserable destinies.
也就是说，三宝对我们的依护是， 保护我们远离这所有的5种伤害，也就是说远离，远离低劣的性格，远离远离无法，也就是不是最有效的修行的方法，以及远离恶趣众。
So the way that the refuge protects from all harms is, for example, the Buddha and the three jewels as well protect, for example, to the blessings or powers of the three jewels, especially the Buddha. Those that are blind are able to regain sight. Those that are deaf are able to hear again, and those that have gone mad are able to become sane again. So these you will find if you read the life story of the Buddha. There are mentions of how the Buddha has had performed such actions of helping sentient beings, and as I mentioned earlier, making the blind see, the deaf hear, and those that have gone mad sane again.
三宝对我们的救护是通过三宝的加持而来，就像在佛陀的广传里面说，佛的功德可以让眼睛看不见的人重见光明，可以让耳朵听不见的重新听到声音，可以让精神不稳定的人重新获得正常的精神，或者获得平静。
And then the second, it says it protects from the view of a substantial personality. So what that is that we all, I guess you could say, all sentient beings have the view of a substantial personality. We believe in the I, there being truly being an I. So to the blessings of the three jewels, to the power of that, it protects us. It sort of diminishes our view, because the Buddha very strongly said that there is no I in the ultimate sense. There is no such thing as I, and it is just a wrong. It is just a misconception. So because the Buddha says that, it helps to, if we listen to him, it helps us to diminish our view of a substantial personality. That is how it protects from this view.
从保护我们远离低劣的人格当中说起的话，也就是说，佛陀或者是说佛法给了我们一个重新看问题的一双眼睛，或者是说给了我们一个或者是说让我们远离我们以前的见解。在佛法当中，佛陀不承认有眼睛这个说法，而是说是用佛法来给我们一个重新来认识我们自己的一个角度。
The reason the Buddha very strongly, if you look at his teachings, he very strongly disagrees with the existence of a substantial personality, is because the view of the substantial personality is the very cause or root of birth in samsara. It is the very cause or root of why we are here in samsara and why we got here in the first place. So if we are able to get rid of this view, then samsara or cyclic existence stops for ourselves. We are able to be free from the cyclic existence, because we have cut off the root of birth in the cyclic existence, which is this view. So therefore, in order for us to get rid of this view, the Buddha has said that it is a misconception, that even though there is no I, we blindly believe that there is an I. So that is how the Buddha protects from the view of a substantial personality.
从这个见解的角度来说，或者是说我们的低劣的人格来说的话，就是佛陀不同意有眼睛的这个说法，是因为佛陀认为我们错误的见解是让我们轮回的因，也就是说我们在没有正确的见解，或者是说我们之前错误的理解当中，会让我们继续轮回，也就是佛陀给了我们一个正确的见解，让我们不再轮回。
And then the Buddha also protects from the Hinayana, which may sound confusing at first because the Buddha himself was the one that did, introduce gave the teachings of the Hinayana. But in this case, what it means is that this is based on a Buddhist, on a Mahayana belief. It is based on the Mahayana, speaking based on the Mahayana belief that the Buddha, although he may temporarily introduce the Hinayana path to practitioners, he will eventually introduce them to the Mahayana path and convert, move them to the different vehicle, which is the Mahayana vehicle, to the higher vehicle. And how that works is that, for example, once the Hinayana practitioner has attained arahathood, which is their highest attainment, and according to the Mahayana tradition, the arahats sort of end up in a deep kind of, maybe you could say, meditation. And then the Buddha wakes them up from that meditation and tells them that your mission is not complete. Your true destiny is to attain full and complete enlightenment. So now you need to become a Bodhisattva and become a fully enlightened Buddha. So to that, the Buddha converts them to the Mahayana tradition.
从这个低劣层的角度来说，可能最开始听起来有一点矛盾，因为这个小乘佛法也是佛陀所宣讲的，但是这里是从大乘的佛法，大乘佛法的角度来说，虽然小乘佛法也是佛陀所宣讲的，但是最终佛陀还是会让获得阿罗汉的果位的修行人来趋入大乘。比如说，从最一开始修行小乘佛法获得阿罗汉果位的成就者，从大乘的角度来说，他们只不过是入了一个深深的禅定，佛陀会让他们从禅定当中醒来，并告诉他们要圆满佛菩萨的果位。
And then the Buddha also protects from ineffective methods. So ineffective methods means wrong methods, methods that do not really help one to be free from suffering.
同样三宝也救护我们也从无法当中救护我们。无法也就是指错误的方法或者是错误的修行的方法。
So this means ineffective methods to attain a good rebirth in the future lifetime, and also both a good rebirth in the future lifetime, and also liberation.
从这个无法的角度来说，如果就是这个错误的方法不会让我们投身善知或者是获得解脱。
Because there are many traditions in the past and still do exist many different types. For example, in India, there used to be traditions where they believed that if you sleep on a bed that is full of spikes, that full of needles, if you sleep on a bed that has needles, you will attain liberation. Or if you starve yourself, you will attain liberation. And if you jump from a cliff, you will attain liberation. Or if you kill sentient beings and offer their blood to the worldly deities, you will, be reborn in heaven and attain liberation. There are many wrong misconceptions and many ineffective methods to attain liberation. So the Buddha teaches the right path, the effective methods, and to that he protects one from following the ineffective methods.
因为过去有很多的错误的传统，比如说在印度的时候，以前有相信，比如说睡在有针的床上可以得到解脱，或者是说通过饥饿或者通过绝食可以得到解脱，也或者是说通过跳崖可以得到解脱，或者是杀不同的众生，然后把这些死掉的众生的血供养给神之类的，可以获得解脱。这些都是没有用的方法，是不能获得解脱的。佛陀通过传授正法才能帮助众生真正得到解脱。
And the way the Buddha teaches the effective methods is by introducing the 10 wholesome or good deeds to his followers, and to that, if they follow that, if they practice the 10 wholesome deeds which the Buddha had introduced to them, then they are able to be reborn either in heaven or as a human again, once again in their future lifetimes. And also in order to attain liberation, the Buddha teaches them the Noble Eightfold Path.
佛陀宣讲正法的方法，也就是让人们修持十善道。如果依教奉行的话，往生就可以转生天人天或者是人道。如果想要修解脱道的话，就要根据佛陀所宣讲的来修持八圣道。
And so those are the effective methods, and through teaching that, the ineffective methods, the Buddha protects one from following those ineffective methods.
以上就是佛陀所宣讲的正法，也就是佛陀想要让众生远离的无法的对立。
And then it also says that the Buddha protects one from miserable destinies. So what that means is that, for example, how we can understand this is that the Buddha sometimes travels to hell, or not just hell, but also the three. He travels to the three lower realms, which are the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. So he travels there at times, and he emits light from his body. And when he emits light from his body, that light touches the sentient beings that are suffering in the three lower realms. And due to that, they immediately die, and from there, and they are transferred to a better place, a better destination, such as heaven or the human realm. And from there on, they are able to practice the Dharma and then eventually attain liberation or full enlightenment.
最后一点就是说佛法能够保护我们远离恶趣。这个意思就是说，佛陀会去到恶趣道，比如说地狱、恶鬼、地狱、恶鬼以及动物道。然后在佛陀去往的三恶道的时候，佛陀的身上会放无量的光芒，然后通过这个光芒接触到那些三恶趣的众生的话，他们会立刻的死去，然后就会投身到善道，比如说人或者天人，然后通过修行可以得到解脱。
And then the next one. So this is the second one, I believe. The second is determining in detail the nature of taking refuge. So this, from here on, it speaks of the different kinds of refuge in great detail.
然后我们接下来说皈依里面的第二部分的解释，也就是皈依的自信，里面有很多不同的细分，然后我们会一一的说。
So there are two main approaches, mundane and supermundane. The mundane taking a refuge has two subtypes, worldly in mentality and worldly in terms of the objects in which refuge is taken. So it's what it says here is that there are two ways, mundane or supermundane. Basically, mundane means the worldly way of taking refuge, and the supermundane means the non-worldly way of taking refuge. So the worldly way, the mundane way of taking refuge, or the worldly way of taking refuge has two different types. One is worldly in mentality, and the other one is worldly in terms of the objects which refuge is taken. So basically, one of the worldly ways of taking refuge is from how this is mentality. So it is how you view things. The aim is worldly. It basically means that your aim is worldly. And then the objects of the worldly in terms of the objects mean that even if your aim is super mundane, the objects is very poor. The object whom you are taking refuge in is very poor. It is not something like the three jewels. It is something very poor, that does not have much power to protect you.
接下来我们说皈依的类别。皈依可以分两类，可以分为世间的皈依和出世间的皈依。在世间的皈依里面，还可以分对于发心和对于皈依的对象来做分类。发心来说，就是我们皈依的目的，然后从皈依的 对境或者是对象来说，就算是出世间的皈依的话，也有殊胜的皈依对境和不那么殊胜的皈依对境。
And then the super mundane taking a refuge also has two main types. So just like the worldly or mundane way of taking refuge, the super mundane also has two subtypes. So one is the common and the other one is the non-common way of taking refuge.
从出世间皈依的角度来说，也有两个细分，一个是共同的出世间皈依，一个是不共的皈依。
So the common refers to the Hinayana way of taking refuge, and the non-common refers to the Mahayana way of taking refuge.
从出世间皈依的角度来说，共同的就是，小乘的皈依，不共的就是大乘的皈依。
So says the common type has two subtypes.
然后从共同的皈依当中又有两个不同的细分。
As I mentioned, the common refers to Hinayana. So the Hinayana itself has two subtypes, which is the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddha.
就像刚才所说的，共同的出世间皈依是指小乘的皈依。从小乘佛法的皈依角度来说，又可以细分为声闻乘和缘觉乘。
And then the uncommon type also has two subtypes, that of the perfection vehicle and that of the Vajra vehicle. Thus, 6 subtypes exist in all. So the uncommon, which refers to Mahayana, has two subtypes. It is the perfection vehicle and that of the Vajra vehicle, which means Vajrayana. And so therefore, a total, if you count it all together, there are 6 ways of taking refuge, which are, the first is are the first 2 of the worldly way, which I mentioned, is the mentality, worldly in mentality, and worldly in terms of, the second is worldly in terms of the object. And then the third is the Shravaka way of taking refuge. The fourth is the Pratyeka way of taking refuge. The fifth is the perfection way of taking refuge, according to the perfection vehicle. And the sixth is the way of taking refuge according to the Vajrayana.
从出世间不共的皈依当中，也可以细分为两个，一个是波罗蜜多乘，也就是显宗；另外一个就是金刚乘。所以这样总结来说的话，皈依可以总共细分为可以细分为6个不同的类别。再总结下来说的话，从世间的皈依的角度来说，细分为2个，一个是从发心或者是目的来做皈依，另外一个是从对境的角度来分为另外一种不同世间的皈依。从出世间的角度来说，有共和不共的皈依；从共同的角度，也就是小乘来说，有声闻乘和缘觉乘；不共来说，有波罗蜜多乘或者是显宗以及金刚乘。所以总共是6个。
So it will mention in more detail below of what each of these mean.
然后接下来我们会详细的介绍这6种不同的皈依分别是什么意思。
So it says differences between the 2 ways of taking refuge can be explained in terms of 4 types: differences in motivating cause, differences of object in which refuge is taken, differences of time, and differences of aim.
然后我们又从4个方面来具体介绍这些皈依。它从不同的4个特点来说，有皈依的原因皈依的对境皈依的时间以及皈依的目的。
So it speaks of 4 topics here, and these 4 are in order for us. It speaks about it in order for us to have a better understanding of the differences between each of these 6 ways of taking refuge.
这4个不同的特点可以让我们更好的了解这6种不同皈依的区别。
And you can go to the next slide. So the first difference that is mentioned, there are 4, it said that it would mention 4. So this is the first one among the 4. Differences in motivating cause. So basically it speaks of that there is a difference between the worldly and the non-worldly ways of taking refuge, to the causes of difference. Because there's a difference of cause, there's also a difference in the refuges, the ways of taking refuge.
我们先来说第一个，就是皈依原因的，皈依的不同的原因。从世间和出世间的角度来说，都有不同的去皈依的原因，所以也就是通过这个原因来区分世间与出世间皈依的不同。
So the chief causes for the worldly person taking refuge are fear and desire. So what that means is that when a person takes refuge according to the worldly way of taking refuge, they will take refuge either due to fear or desire, and sometimes both. So fear is the fear of suffering that one experiences in this life, because we do not wish to suffer. So we are afraid of suffering, and so we take refuge. Some people take refuge in a worldly way due to fear, and some also take refuge due to desire, which is to attain some kind of like financial success or fame and things like that.
从世间的皈依角度来说，皈依有两种不同的原因，或者是因为恐惧，或者是因为欲望，或者两者皆有。从恐惧的角度来说，就是不希望痛苦，不希望受苦；从欲望或者薪酬的角度来说，也可以说是对世间的名或利的追逐。
And it can also be to attain something good for oneself in one's future lifetime, such as a good rebirth in one's future lifetime. Those are all categorized into this way of taking refuge.
或者是说我们对来世的需求也比如说希望投身善趣、往生善趣的话，也是世间的皈依的一个原因。
So this is the worldly aim. This is the worldly aim. The motivation is very worldly. It is not the kind of unworldly. It is because it is worldly, because it does not. They do not aim. The person that is wishing to be free from fear and to attain fame and like, they do not aim to be free from suffering completely. It is just like just to be free from the sudden sufferings that they experience. Basically, they do not aim for liberation. They do not aim for liberation, and they do not aim for enlightenment. So therefore, the aim is worldly.
这个是就前面说的，因为恐惧或者是因为薪酬的皈依的原因，是世间的皈依的原因。因为从另一个角度来说，这一些皈依的修行人，他们不希求从轮回当中获得真正的解脱，也就是说，他们不想证悟或者摆脱轮回，他们只想获得暂时的解脱，比如说获得一些世间的好处，或者是暂时摆脱世间的痛苦。
And it says, whereas for the Shravaka and the Pratyeka Buddha, though fear and desire are present, faith is the main cause. So for the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddhas, basically it means for those who are striving to attain, to become a Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha, when they take refuge, the causes of taking refuge, for the causes of taking refuge, there are fear and desire. There can be, it means there can be, just like the worldly way of taking refuge. It can be out of fear. They may take refuge out of fear of suffering, and also desire to attain a future good rebirth. But the main cause for them to take refuge is faith, and this is faith in the three jewels.
接下来说声闻和缘觉乘的皈依。声闻和缘觉乘的皈依，可以和世间的皈依一样，是出于部位和希求，比如说不享受痛苦以及希求投身善道。但是声闻和缘觉乘主要皈依的原因是出自于信心。
So Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha are like practitioners, or like the result of the Hinayana practice. So if you practice the Hinayana practice, you either become a Shravaka or a Pratyeka Buddha. these are two, it's kind of like two paths which you can go to.
声闻乘和缘觉乘分别是小乘的两个不同的果位。也就是说，如果我们修行小乘佛法的话，我们能得到的果位就是声闻乘或者是缘觉乘。
So one can understand the Shavaka as maybe as an arahat, or also in this case, because it is speaking of the causes of taking refuge, it is someone that is about to enter, or that has just entered the path of to attain arahathood, or someone that has entered the path to attain the Pratyeka Buddha, which is also known as the half Buddha.
声闻乘的话，也就是说是，如果修行声闻乘的修行人的话，以后就会证得阿罗汉的果位；如果选择修行缘觉乘的话，以后就会得到半佛或者是辟支佛的果位。
And the Bodhisattva, it says the Bodhisattva has those three causes too, yet for him compassion predominates. So what that means is that for the Bodhisattva, when they take refuge in the three jewels, they may take refuge out of fear of the sufferings of samsara, desire to attain a better rebirth, and also faith in the three jewels. But the main cause for them to take refuge in the three jewels, the main thing that motivates them to take refuge is compassion. It is out of compassion for sentient beings, compassion to free sentient beings from suffering, that they take refuge in the three jewels.
从不共的大乘菩萨皈依的原因来说，也可以分为是三种。和之前的一样，也可以是出于部位心，出于希求心以及出于信心。也就是说，也可以是对于轮回的对轮回痛苦的部位，也可以说是对于往生投生善趣的希求，也可以说是具有信心。但是最主要的，对于不共的大乘菩萨来说，皈依主要的原因是出于大悲心，是对众生的大悲心，以及对于希望救度众生的大悲心。
So there's great reason, to speak of this, because to speak of the causes of taking refuge, because if you're yet to take refuge, for example, sometime later, soon, or even tomorrow or sometime, then if you want to, take refuge successfully, you need one of these causes. Like at least one of these causes have to be present to take refuge. So, and if all of them, especially the best would be compassion. So if we know that these are the causes, and then we can make sure to have, we can make sure to be endowed with some of these causes, if not all, for ourselves. And then when we take refuge, everything works out well. So therefore, it's important to think about these causes.
我们这里强调皈依的原因，对，是非常的重要。因为我们以后或者是说明天我们去皈依的话，如果要有一个圆满的皈依戒的话，最好是具有所有的这些因，最好是出于大悲心去皈依。如果有一部分也是很好的，但是如果所有的因都能够具足的话，那就是非常殊胜的皈依。
And we can go to the next slide.
然后我们接下来看下一页。
And the differences of object. So this speaks of the differences of object, which is that it speaks for the, so we will just continue now for now. People belonging to the worldly and super-mundane spheres take refuge in different objects. So what that means is that people who practice the worldly practices, which is, for example, non-Buddhist practices, and also those who practice the Buddhist practices, who are on the Buddhist path, take refuge in different objects. So it means that not everyone that takes refuge will take refuge in the three jewels. Some take refuge in the three jewels. There are also others who take refuge, but it is not in the three jewels, but it is someone else, someone or something else.
接下来我们说皈依的对象或者是说皈依的对境。从对境来说的话，也有分世间和出世间的不同的对境。不是所有的皈依都是像佛法僧皈依。从世间的皈依的角度来说，对境也有可能是非常不同的。
And it says to take refuge in the first, and the worldly person takes refuge in either an inferior or superior object.
Go ahead.
So that means that when the worldly person takes refuge, it can either be something that is poor or something that is quite powerful, but still, not as powerful as the three jewels.
从世间的皈依的来说，世间的皈依是非常低劣的对境，就算是有一些比较好的对境，但是从和出世间的皈依的对境来相比，也不是那么的殊胜。
So it says to take refuge in the first is to go for refuge to the great mundane gods such as Ishvara or Brahma, or to whatever other objects you prefer, such as trees or hills. So that means is that when you take refuge in the inferior object, it is either great gods such as Ishvara or Brahma, which are Hindu gods, or to whatever other objects you prefer, such as trees or hills. There are some that take refuge to inferior objects such as trees or hills. And that is like, for example, when it is raining, you may go under a tree for shelter. Or, if there's like lightning and there's something going on that scares you, then you may also take refuge in hills or caves and the like. So it is, that is what it means. The object is inferior, basically.
从世间皈依的对境来说，这些皈依的对境都是比较低劣的对境，比如说，特别是在印度教里面会皈依，比如说湿婆或者是梵天等，或者有一些人会皈依树或者是山丘，就比如说，下雨的时候会到树下去避雨，然后或者打雷的时候因为害怕会躲到山丘或者树洞里去避雨对于他们来说，这也是他们依止的这些对境。
So it says, as it is taught in a sutra, so this is a quote from the sutra, some who are hard pressed by fears commonly seek refuge in hills, forests, or large tree. But that is not the superior refuge, for by resorting to those refuges, you will not escape the greatest dangers. So it says that some who are hard pressed by fears, it is common that they will seek refuge in hills, forests, or under large trees to, face the danger or fear. However, those are not superior refuges. Those are not the best places to take refuge, because by taking refuge in large trees or forests or hills, you're still not free from, it will not protect you from the greatest dangers, which is the sufferings of samsara in general.
就是现在PPT 上显示的这个宋词里面来看的话，有一些确实是会因为恐惧或者是因为部位去皈依，比如说山林或者是路，但是从这个对境的角度来说，这些都不是最殊胜的对境，因为这一些皈依的对境不管是山林树或者之前说到的那些神，他们都不能让我们从轮回当中获得解脱，所以这样来看的话，这一些皈依的对境，虽然我们因为部位去皈依，但是不会让我们远离轮回的痛苦，不会让我们获得解脱。
So the way we can understand this is that when it says taking refuge in hills, large trees, or forests, it means that some people take refuge to actually prostrate to hills, forests, or large trees because they are believed to be spirits residing in such places. Like there are spirits, the hill spirits, or the forest spirits, or spirits living in large trees. And there's many more, the spirits of the river, spirits of the sky, and so many people prostrate themselves to such objects and request for protection and the like, but it is saying that they are not the best places to take refuge in, because the reason why is because such spirits living, such gods or spirits living in trees, forests, and the like, they themselves are not free from samsara. They themselves are not free from suffering of samsara. And since we wish to be free from suffering, it is not the best. What it's saying is that it is not the best idea to take refuge in someone that is they themselves are not free from the sufferings of samsara as well. So that is why they are the
在这里说，因为恐惧去皈依山林或者是树的话，这一些皈依的人，他们也会去顶礼山林或者是树，因为他们相信，比如说有山神，或者是他们皈依的河流，或者是天空上面有不同的神，比如说有水神或者是天神之类的。但是这一些皈依的对境都不是最殊胜的，因为这一些他们所皈依的神，不管是山神也好，树神也好，他们自己都没有从轮回当中获得解脱，他们自己都没有能够摆脱轮回的痛苦。也就是说，如果我们的目的是希求获得轮回的解脱，或从轮回中获得解脱，或者是说摆脱痛苦的话，那我们最好不要皈依自己都没有摆脱轮回痛苦，或者是摆脱轮回没有得到解脱的对境。
And then we can go to the second slide. So the worldly taking a refuge in superior objects is taking refuge in the three jewels, but with a worldly mentality. So that is what I mentioned earlier. There are two types of ways of taking refuge: the worldly way of taking refuge in mentality, and also in terms of the object. So the object has already been mentioned. The object has already been mentioned just right now. So now this is speaking of the way of taking refuge with a worldly mentality. So how that works is to gain protection from the fearsome aspects of this life or the next, or to reap some advantage, so that even though you take refuge in the three jewels, that worldly motivation prevents you being liberated from cyclic existence.
接下来我们说，世间的皈依的当中的，从对境当中，从动机的来区分。之前说过，世间的皈依当中可以分为发心以及分为对境来分。我们之前已经讲过了对境，我们接下来讲发心。从世间的皈依当中，因为发心的不同，就算是皈依三宝的话，也没有办法让我们彻底的摆脱轮回的痛苦，彻底获得真正的解脱。因为我们的动机不同，所以就会有这样的结果。
So how this works is that the worldly way of taking refuge, with the worldly mentality, is that you're taking refuge in the three jewels. The objects here is the three jewels, not like, it is not the gods mentioned earlier, such as Ishvara or Brahma, nor is it trees or hills and the like, but it is the three jewels. However, your aim or the motivation is worldly. It is not, you're not taking refuge in the three jewels in order to attain liberation, but it is rather to reap some, good results, good results, such as long life, or financial success and things like that, and also just a good future rebirth and things like that. Not the aim is not for liberation.
从这个世间的皈依的动机来说，这里要强调的是，我们从世间的皈依，它的对境也是皈依三宝的对境，不是我们之前所说的外道的神，比如说是湿婆或者是梵天，或者是去皈依山树丘陵山丘等等。皈依的对境是指三宝，但是因为动机是世间的世间的皈依的动机，所以的话，这一些皈依的动机。不会让我们从轮回当中获得真正的解脱，能够摆脱轮回的痛苦。可能这些皈依的对境是出于希望获得长寿，获得更多的钱财，或者是投身善趣。所以从这一点来说，这还是属于世间的皈依。
So this is something that we really need to look out for, because this is something I believe that is very dangerous for Dharma practitioners, to think of, because we forget the main goal, which is either liberation or full enlightenment, and sometimes we may end up praying to the three jewels for just to attain good, long life or fame and to become rich and things like that. So if you think that way, then it is not really something that a Dharma practitioner would really think of, because also it is said by Lord Manjushri, the Bodhisattva Manjushri, that if you are attached to this life, you are not a true Dharma practitioner. So therefore, these are all, these wishes all come from being attached to this life and this life alone. So if you think about that, then it is not something that a Dharma practitioner should be thinking of.
这一点是我们要特别注意的，而且是非常的对修行来说是非常危险的一点，因为我们很容易会忘记我们皈依的动机是为了获得真正究竟的解脱。我们很有可能经常祈祷三宝的时候是出于想要获得名利、获得钱财去皈依，这样是非常危险的。特别对于修行人来说，不能以这样的动机去皈依三宝。就像文殊菩萨所说的，希求此生非行人。如果我们的动机是想要获得世间的快乐的话，那就不是修行人应该有的皈依的动机。
And so it says, so that even though you take refuge in the three jewels, that worldly motivation prevents you being liberated from cyclic existence. So it is saying that even though you may take refuge in the three jewels, that the object of taking refuge is super mundane, it is really great, but because your aim is very poor, your goal is something very short-sighted, I guess you could say. You will not be free. You will not be able to be liberated from cyclic existence, and that means you will not be able to be free from suffering. You will not be able to abandon suffering for good.
这里还是要再强调，就是如果就算我们是皈依了殊胜的三宝的话，但是以这样的动机还是无法摆脱轮回，无法脱离轮回。也就是说，如果我们的对机是非常的浅显、非常的肤浅，只是看眼前的名利等等的话，世间各种的需求，这样子就算是皈依殊胜的对境、皈依三宝的话，也是没有办法获得解脱。
And then we go to the next slide.
让我看下一页。
People of a super mundane approach have different objects of refuge, depending on whether they belong to the traditions held in common or those not held in common. The Shravakas, who make up the first of the two common traditions, take refuge in the three jewels, and for them, the Sangha is the primary refuge from among the three. The Pradeka Buddhas, the second common tradition, take refuge in the three jewels, but for them, the Dharma is primary. So it's saying that for the super mundane approach of taking refuge, there are different objects. It is the three jewels. For the super mundane, the objects are always the three jewels, but among the three jewels, there's a different focus among the three. So what it means is, for example, when the Shravakas take refuge in the three jewels, Shravakas is one of the two common. So there are common and uncommon, as I mentioned. The common is the Hinayana, the uncommon is the Mahayana. The common, which is the Hinayana, has Shravakas and Pradeka Buddhas. So when Shravakas take refuge in the three jewels, they take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, but they mainly take refuge in the Sangha. While the Pradeka Buddhas, when they take refuge in the three jewels, they take refuge in all three, but they mainly take refuge in the Dharma.
接下来我们说出世间的皈依这里首先要讲的是，出世间的皈依也分有不同的两种，像屏幕上显示的有共同的对境和不共的对境。我们之前讲过出世间的皈依共同的来说就是指小乘的皈依，就是指不同声闻乘或者是缘觉乘。虽然这个共同和不共的皈依的对境都是一样的，都是皈依三宝，但是在佛法僧三宝当中有不同的侧重点。对于声闻乘来说皈依的对境主要的侧重点是皈依僧众；对于缘觉乘来说，他们的侧重点是皈依佛法。
The next slide. Among the two traditions not held in common, in the perfection vehicle, refuge is taken in the three jewels where the Buddha is the main refuge. So among the two traditions that are not held in common means the uncommon tradition, which is the Mahayana tradition. The Mahayana also has two sub-traditions, I guess you could say. One is the perfection vehicle, and one is the Vajra vehicle, or the Vajrayana. So among these two, the first, which is the perfection vehicle, when a practitioner of the perfection vehicle takes refuge in the three jewels, they take refuge in all three, but the focus, they mainly take refuge in the Buddha.
接下来我们说关于出世间的皈依，也就是我们之前讲的不共的皈依。这里就是指大乘佛教的皈依，也可以说细分为两个不同的，一个是波罗蜜多乘，也就是显宗乘，然后第二个就是密乘。同样跟之前说的出世间的皈依的共同的小乘佛法一样，皈依的都是三宝，但是侧重点对于大乘佛法来说，皈依的侧重点是皈依佛陀。
And it quotes here, as Maitreya's Uttara Tantra explains. So this is not really a real tantra. It is just, it is more like a sutra, but it is called tantra. So it was taught by Maitreya, the Buddha, Bodhisattva Maitreya. So it says, because they are to be abandoned, possess a deceptive quality, are non-existent, and possess fear. The two aspects of Dharma and the assembly of ayas are not permanent places of refuge.
就像在弥勒，就像在弥勒菩萨当中的《宝训论》当中所说的我们现在 PPT 上能看到的这个颂词，然后我们接下来看下一页。
The refuge of living beings is in truth the Buddha alone. The sage possesses a Namana Kaya, and the Sangha is his ultimate manifestation. So that is the quote from the Uttara Tantra.
然后上面屏幕当中显示的这个颂词还是弥勒菩萨的《宝训论》当中里面的颂词。
And the reason why it is quoted here is because this quote speaks of why the Dharma and the Sangha are not the ultimate refuge, but the Buddha is the ultimate refuge.
这个颂词主要的解释的就是为什么对于大乘佛法的皈依来说，他们的侧重点不是皈依法或者是皈依僧，而是皈依佛，是作为大乘佛法的皈依的侧重点。
So we can go back to the previous slide.
然后我们再回到前面一页。
So to explain this quote, first we need to understand that what the Dharma is. So the Dharma can be divided into two different kinds of Dharma. It is the scriptural Dharma and the Realization Dharma.
然后我们现在具体来解释皈依三宝里面当中的法宝。法宝也可以分为教法和正法两部分。
So what the scriptural Dharma means is the three baskets of the Buddha that the Buddha taught, which are the Vinaya, which is the monastic code or practices, guidelines for the monastic practices. And then the second is the Abhidharma. And then the third is the Sutra. So these are the three baskets. And these three are known as the scriptural Dharma.
从法宝当中的教法当中，主要是指佛陀讲的三藏，也就是论经和藏。
And then the realization Dharma also has two different types. The realization Dharma has the truth of the path and the truth of cessation.
从法宝的正法的当中角度来说，也可以再细分为两个，一个是道地，一个是灭地。
So I'm speaking of the Dharma based on the Mahayana views. So when we speak of the two different kinds of realization Dharma, which are the truth of the path and the truth of cessation, that one of these, which is the truth of the path, what that means is the truth of the path here means the the kind of like the realization in the Bodhisattvas, the realization of the non-existence of a self, and also the qualities of loving kindness and compassion that is inherent within a Bodhisattva. That is the truth of the path.
从正法当中细分的道地来说，也就是证得菩萨的果位的方法，也就是证得无我，或者具有大悲心。
And then the truth of cessation here refers to the stainless nature of the mind of the Aryas, the Bodhisattva Aryas.
从正法当中的灭地当中，也就是说，可以说是从一切现象当中看似从未存在过，或者是说证得菩萨的见解。
So the truth of the path and the truth of cessation that is inherent within the Bodhisattvas is known as the Dharma. And the truth of the path and the truth of the cessation that is inherent within the Buddha is known as the Buddha.
所以从法宝当中的教法，也就是佛菩萨所具有的来说，这一些是佛菩萨的功德。然后从正法的角度来说，也就之前讲的灭地和道地是佛陀所具有的。
So with this, we have an understanding of the Dharma. And we, of course, the main point here is that it is saying that the Buddha is the ultimate refuge and the Dharma and the Sangha are not.
所以这个总结来说，法宝和僧宝都不是最终的所皈依处，我们最终要皈依的是佛陀。
And the reason why the Dharma is not is because the reason why the Dharma is not the ultimate refuge is because, as I mentioned earlier, the Dharma has different kinds of Dharma. There's the scriptural Dharma and the realization Dharma. So first of all, the scriptural Dharma is not the ultimate refuge because, as it says here, it is to be abandoned. We are supposed to abandon the scriptural Dharma eventually. It doesn't mean we need to abandon it now, but of course we need to rely on it now, but eventually it needs to be abandoned.
这里再细说一下，为什么法宝和僧宝不是最究竟的皈依处？对于法宝来说，就像之前讲的，有教法和正法两部分。对于教法来说，我们虽然现在需要依赖教法，但是真正得到了或者是学到了这些教法的话，就是这一些还是要摆脱，不能彻底的依赖这些教法。
Because right now we need the scriptural Dharma. We need to study the sutras, the Abhidharma and the Vinaya. We need to study such scriptural Dharma. But eventually, when we get the understanding or the realization of what it means, what the teachings, the scriptures are conveying, once we understand that, once the realization is born in our mind, then because we already know now, the realization is already with us, we do not need to rely on the scriptures anymore. So we do not need it anymore once the realization is born. The very purpose of the existence of scriptures is for us to study them and for us to gain realization. Once that realization is born in us, then we do not need the scriptures anymore. So that is why it is something to be abandoned in the end.
为什么说我们最后要摆脱教法？就是因为，对于教法来说的话，就是之前讲的经律和论，这些我们现在确实是需要学习，然后通过学习我们证悟了这些经文当中这些经文当中的内容的话，也就是说我们都已经具有了这些教法的内容，我们就不需要再依赖教法，也就是说我们得到了圆满的正觉以后，就不需要再依赖三藏里面的经律论。
It is like sailing on a boat. If a sailor wants to get to the other side of the river or the water, and if they want to get to land, they need to go by boat. and they need to use the boat for the whole travel. But once they arrive there, once they arrive on land, they do not need to take their boat along with them. They can just leave it there and then they can move on. So likewise, for now, as beginners or practitioners, we do need the scriptural Dharma. However, once the realization is born, then we do not need it anymore. So that is why it is something that we can just leave eventually, and thus it is something to be abandoned. And because of that, it is not the ultimate refuge.
再举一个例子来说，我们现在依赖正法，对不起，我们现在依赖教法，就像我们现在如果要渡河到达大陆的话，我们需要船只一样。但是如果我们真正的上岸，或者是我们真正到了陆地上的话，我们就不需要再拖着这个船，或者是说我们再不需要把这个船跟着我们上路，我们就可以摆脱这个船。就好像我们现在修行的话，是需要经论，然后但是我们真正如果证悟了经文里面的内容的话，就不再需要那些经文。
And then there's the realization dharma. And as I mentioned, there are two realization dharmas that is inherent within the Bodhisattvas. It is the truth of the path and the truth of cessation.
然后从正法当中，也就是佛菩萨所具有的的正法，也就是指灭谛和道谛。
And the truth of the path, the dharma, or the realization of the truth of the path, is how we can understand that is that it is the wisdom of the Bodhisattvas. It is the wisdom of the Bodhisattvas. However, it has not merged with the nature of phenomena. So it has not been merged with the nature of phenomena. And so therefore, it stays, the wisdom of the Bodhisattvas stays in a conditioned kind of existence. Something that is, conditioned existence is something that always is prone to change. And something that is prone to change cannot be your ultimate refuge. So therefore, the realization of the Dharma, the truth of the path, is not the ultimate refuge.
从这个正法当中的道谛来说的话，也就是指佛菩萨所具有的智慧，但是这个智慧没有与现象的本性所结合，所以就是从另一个角度来说，它是在不断的变化，它具有无常的本质，所以这样子来看的话，这也就是为什么说法宝不是最究竟的皈依处。
So it says possesses a deceptive quality. So what that means here is that, as I mentioned, the wisdom of the Bodhisattva, because it has not merged with the nature of phenomena, also known as Dharma Dhatu, which maybe some of you might have heard. Because it has not merged with that, it is the nature of conditioned existence, and it is always changing, and it is of deceptive quality.
再重复在前面说的，就是如果是就是之前说的道谛的话，就是佛菩萨的智慧没有和现象的本性，或者是说和佛性所结合，所以它是总在一直的变化。因为它变化的话，就是说它非常的无常，所以也就不是一个最殊胜的皈依的对境。
And then it says on non-existence. So what that means is that the truth of cessation. So the realization of Dharma has two: the truth of path and truth of cessation. The second one, the truth of cessation of the Bodhisattvas, that has not been merged with the, has not been merged with no, I don't know how to say this. I guess you could say wisdom. There is a word, I do not know how to pronounce it exactly. I think it's called Gnosis. Maybe it's gnosis, I think. Is that how it's pronounced? Gnosis. So it has not merged with gnosis. So therefore, stays as a separate kind of entity from gnosis. The realization, the truth of the cessation of the Bodhisattva has not merged with the gnosis, so therefore it stays a separate entity from the gnosis.
从灭地的角度来说，也就是正法的第二部分，可以说灭地它没有与智慧所相结合，所以它也不是一个究竟的归依处。
So basically, that is what we can understand. It is not basically the whether it is the truth of the path or the truth of the cessation of the bodhisattvas. It has not merged with the Dharma Dhatu or the nature of phenomena, or it has not merged with the gnosis. While the Buddha's gnosis and the nature phenomena have been merged. It is inseparable. So that is why it is the Buddha is the best or the ultimate refuge.
所以在总结来说，这个法宝里面的教法和正法，从道地的角度来说，它没有与现象的本性或者是佛性所结合，面地来说没有与智慧所结合。但是法宝，对不起，但是佛宝的话，它是具有智慧与现象的本性所结合的功德。所以就是为什么说法宝不是我们最终的归依处，而佛宝是我们最终的归依处。
So yes, I think it's pronounced as gnosis. So anyway, the Buddha's gnosis and the nature of phenomena have merged, and it is like, for example, there is water, and you pour milk on top of the water, and then the water and milk become merged together. And once the water and milk are merged, you cannot say anymore that this is the water, this is the milk. Once it has become merged, it becomes inseparable. So likewise for the Buddha's gnosis, I think, and the nature phenomena are merged and inseparable. That makes him the ultimate refuge.
从皈依法宝为什么它是我们最究竟的皈依的来说的话，就像水与牛奶的融合，一旦把水倒入了牛奶当中，如果二者一旦融合的话，就很难再分别出哪一部分是水，哪一部分是牛奶。从皈依佛法的从皈依法宝的角度来说，因为法宝的对不起，因为佛宝它的智慧与现象的本性是所结合的，所以就是为什么说这个是我们最究竟的归依处。
And we can go to the next slide. I do not exactly know too well how to explain that quote from the was it the Uttara Tantra, because I have not. Let me see. It says, yes, the two aspects of Dharma and the assembly of ayas are not permanent places of refuge. So it is saying that the Dharma and the assembly of ayas, which assembly of ayah means those that are enlightened, not fully enlightened, but just enlightened to some extent, are not permanent places of refuge. So it is saying that they are not the ultimate refuge. And the refuge of living beings is, in ultimate truth, the Buddha alone. The sage possesses a Dharmakaya, and the Sangha is its ultimate manifestation. So it is saying that the Buddha alone is the ultimate refuge. He possesses the Dharmakaya, which is the mind of the Buddha. And the Sangha is his ultimate manifestation. So the Sangha is his manifestation. So the Buddha is like the source or the best. So that is what it's saying.
简单的介绍一下这个弥勒菩萨宝训论当中的这个颂词，也就是屏幕上显示的这一句颂词。简单来说的话，就是我们是比如说视为圣者，就 究竟去，也就是说，圣者是指证悟的修行人。然后对于前半句来说，佛者具真实法身的意思来说，法身就是佛陀真实的智慧，然后僧众也就是指佛陀的化身。所以因为佛是具有真实的法身，也就是说是具有真正的智慧，以及究竟的智慧，所以说佛是我们最究竟的皈依。
As for the second, the Vajra vehicle way of taking refuge, I won't explain this here because that belongs to the mantra tradition of teachings. So the second way among the two uncommon ways are among the two Mahayana ways of taking refuge. The second is the Vajra vehicle, which is the Vajrayana way of taking refuge. And it says Sakya is saying that he will not explain how the Vajrayana way of taking refuge is here because that belongs to the mantra tradition. And currently, this book or the text clarifying the sage's intent is focused on the perfection vehicle. And of course, the Mantrayana or the Vajrayana teachings are secret. So that is one reason why he is not going to mention it here. So that is what he's saying.
接下来从出世间的皈依当中的最后一部分就是不共的皈依，也就是密乘或金刚乘的皈依，不在这里做解释。因为萨迦班智达这个牟尼密显明论是一部显宗的一个论点，然后这里开示的大乘佛法当中就不会细讲关于金刚乘的皈依。
The traditional ways of identifying the three jewels also vary. The Shravakas and Pradeka Buddhas do not hold that the Buddha possesses three bodies. They hold that only Buddhas such as Shakyamuni who attained awakening at the Vajra seat in Bodh Gaya are real Buddhas in the strict sense of the word. So what that means is that the ways of identifying the three jewels, so both Hinayana and Mahayana both accept the three jewels. They accept the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, but the way they understand each of them varies. So the way it varies is that the Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas do not accept the Buddha to be someone that is endowed with the three bodies. The Mahayanas accept the Buddha to be endowed with the three bodies, but the Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas do not accept the Buddha to be endowed with the three bodies.
接下来对这个佛的法身对三宝当中各层有不同的认定，就像屏幕当中显示的，虽然所有的佛教徒皈依的三宝，但是都会皈依三宝，但是名称虽然相同，但是意义都有不同，就是会有不同的意义。从声闻和缘觉乘来说，他们不相信佛有三身，大乘佛教是承认有三身的，但是对于声闻和缘觉乘他们的理解当中。真正的佛是指在菩提迦耶或者是菩提树下成道的成道的佛陀，这才是他们认为真正的佛。所以就是为什么说声闻乘和缘觉乘对三宝当中的佛宝有不同的，对不起，声闻缘觉乘与大乘对佛有不同的理解。
It says they hold that only Buddhas such as Shakyamuni who attain awakening at the Vajra seat in Bodh Gaya are real Buddhas in the strict sense of the word. So what that means is that the Hinayanas, both Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas, they accept that when they speak of the Buddha, it in all likelihood means Shakyamuni Buddha. It is not as vast as Mahayana Buddhists speak of the Buddha that is endowed with the three bodies or the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times. They do not speak of anything like that, but to them what Buddha means is strictly Shakyamuni Buddha who attained enlightenment in Bodh Gaya.
对于小乘佛法来说，他们所说的佛，就是指在菩提迦耶的菩提树下成道的释迦牟尼佛，他们认为这才是真正的佛。但是，当大乘佛法说起佛的时候，大乘佛法就指的是佛的三身。
As for the Dharma, they do not take the Mahayana sutras to be genuine. They merely affirm the Shravaka scriptures. So what that means is that for the Dharma, the Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas do not accept the Mahayana sutras to be genuine. They don't believe that the Buddha really taught the Mahayana sutras. but they're sure of their own sutras and scriptures. They only accept their own books, you could say.
当说起法宝的时候，声闻和圆觉尘他们不相信大乘教法是作为正法，他们只认同他们的教法，就是小乘的教法是正法。
The next.
下一页。
In their Sangha too, they do not include the Bodhisattvas, but only the 8 types of Shavaka Aryas. I do not see the mention of Aryas in the Tibetan, so I'm not sure if it should really be there. But anyway, for the Sangha, they do believe, Hinayana practitioners do believe in the concept of a Bodhisattva, but they do not include that in the Sangha. They have their own idea of a Sangha, which is 8 different types of Sanghas or practitioners according to them, which Bodhisattva is not included.
当提及僧宝的时候，小乘他们只相信有阿罗汉，或者是说有八相王，但是他们不承认有佛菩萨。当他们提及僧众的时候，不包括菩萨。
Among the followers of the Mahayana, the perfection vehicle maintains as places of refuge only a Buddha who possesses 3 bodies of Buddhahood, Trikaya. So what that means is for the Mahayana practitioners, when they take refuge in the Buddha, they understand the Buddha to be someone that is endowed with the 3 bodies, which is the Dharma Kaya, the Sambhoga Kaya, and the Namana Kaya.
但是当大乘佛法提及佛的时候，都是指具有3身的佛，比如说就是具有法身、报身以及化身的佛。
And when we speak of the Dharmakaya, basically you can understand that as being the mind of the Buddha.
我们提及法身的时候，也就是指佛的智慧身。
It is called a body here, but it does not mean a visible body. It is basically the mind of the Buddha.
虽然这里也用身这个词，但是不是举一个具体的身体，而是指佛的智慧。
And then there's the Sambhoga Kaya. The Sambhoga Kaya is you can understand it to be a Buddha that is endowed with 5 certainties.
这里还有第二个就是指的是报身。报身可以理解成具有5种智慧的化身。
So the 5 certainties of the Sambhogakaya is that the first is that the Sambhogakaya Buddha is endowed with the 32 major and 80 minor signs of a Buddha, of a fully enlightened Buddha.
这里指的报身的5种定性，就第一个就是指具有32相好以及80种随好。
And the second, which is the certainty of the place where the Sambhogakaya Buddha lives, is the Buddha field or paradise known as Akanishta.
第二个定性也就是指报身佛所也就是指报身佛所居住的地方。
And then the third certainty is the teaching, which the Sambhogakaya Buddha teaches, and it is certain that the Sambhogakaya Buddha teaches only the Mahayana Dharma.
第三个定性也就是指报身佛所教的佛法，也就是大乘佛法。
And the fourth is the certainty of the audience who listen to the Sambhogakaya Buddha teach, and the audience is certain to be only bodhisattvas who are on the 10th level, which is the 10th level, the highest level of a bodhisattva.
第四个定性也就是指听闻佛法的听众，也就是十地菩萨，也就是最高等级的菩萨。
And then lastly, we have the certainty of the duration of time, which is the Sambhogakaya Buddha teaches the Dharma to his audience in that Buddha field until samsara or cyclic existence is emptied. So that is the duration of time, is the certainty of the duration of time.
最后一个是指时间的定性，也就是说，报身佛在佛的刹土当中，直到时间穷尽，还会一直传授佛法。
And then we have the last one, the last body, which is the Namana Kaya. The Namana Kaya is basically the emanation of the Sambhoga Kaya. So the Sambhoga Kaya too, the Sambhoga Kaya, as I mentioned, only lives in Akarnishta. It does not come to this world to teach, but he sends, the Sambhoga Kaya Buddha sends emanations down, which are called Namana Kayas, down to many different worlds to help sentient beings. That is called Namana Kaya.
第三个星题就是指佛的化身，化身就是指佛菩萨智慧的显现。虽然佛只会在佛的刹土当中传授教法，但是佛会有不同的化身来世间教授正法。
And for example, Shakyamuni Buddha is, according to the Mahayana tradition, a Namana Kaya, which is an emanation of the Sambhoga Kaya.
比如说释迦牟尼佛在佛菩萨的刹土当中有报身，然后也有释迦牟尼佛的化身来到世界。
And the Dharma here, it says the Dharma of the Mahayana teachings and the Sangha make up of Bodhisattvas. So the Dharma, according to the Mahayanas, means the Mahayana Dharma, not the Hinayana Dharma.
然后这个传说的教法当中是指的是大乘佛法，不是指小乘佛法。
And the Sangha is made up of Bodhisattvas, which are Bodhisattvas, I believe, the enlightened Bodhisattvas.
然后这里的僧众是指菩萨，也就是指证悟了的菩萨。
So one thing that I forgot to mention of the difference between the Hinayana and the Mahayana. I earlier mentioned that the Hinayanas, when they speak of the Buddha, it mentioned to Shakyamuni Buddha in the strict sense of the word, who attained enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. While according to Mahayana tradition, the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, did not really attain enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. First of all, Shakyamuni Buddha is an emanation of the Sambhoga Kaya, so he's not really the true Buddha. It's just an emanation. It is like the reflection of, the mirror, I guess you could say. And anyway, Shakyamuni Buddha, according to Mahayana tradition, did not really attain enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. It was because Shakyamuni Buddha had attained enlightenment much earlier, many aeons ago. But in order to instill faith in the disciples and to tell them that anyone can attain enlightenment, he performed, you could say, a show or an act of being reborn in this world and doing all of the practices and attaining enlightenment in Bodh Gaya. So that is a difference between the two traditions.
再补充一下，我们之前没有说到的一点，在小乘和大乘的区别当中，对于佛的理解，比如说我们之前提到小乘佛法只认为佛是在菩提伽耶菩提树下成道的释迦牟尼佛，但是大乘佛法却不这么认为。大乘佛法认为释迦牟尼佛也是佛的报身的一种化身。其实，在无量劫当中，在无量劫之前，释迦牟尼佛已经成佛，不是在菩提伽耶的菩提树下成佛。但是佛为了显现给众生，他还是投身到人道通过修行来成佛，所以并不是在菩提伽耶下成佛，而是一个对众生的一个显现。
And it says, I will not explain the three jewels of the mantra tradition here. So the three jewels, according to the mantra tradition or the Vajrayana tradition, Saben will not mention here because that is secret, and also because this is not the place to mention such things.
然后最后金刚乘的三宝不在这里宣讲，因为之前提过这是一个显宗的经典，然后这里不讲金刚乘的三宝。
So we will leave it here for today.
我们今天就讲到这里。So there is a question that when we read sutras, at first, our mind is pretty calm, but later on we'll feel agitated. Our minds get irritated, or we want to take a break. And what should we do in that situation?
Then I think it is all right to take a break. When you start reading a sutra, you don't need to necessarily read nonstop. You can always take a break if you're feeling a bit tired. And if you feel that your mind is restless, you can take a short break. You can maybe drink some water and take a short break, go out and breathe some fresh air, and then come back once you feel a little bit more calm.
法王子的对于刚刚说持咒当中，之后感觉到疲惫或者感觉烦躁的回答，就是说，那可以休息一下，可以喝一口水，或者是休息一下再回来继续持咒。There is another question that wonders, what is the main idam that is being practiced in Sakya tradition?
There are many idams in the Sakya tradition, but the main idam is Hevajra. It is known as Hevajra. It is the main idam which the Lamdre cycle of teachings is focused on.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the name again, please?
Hevajra. It is H-E and then Vajra.
法王子说，在萨迦派当中有很多不同的本尊最主要的本尊是喜金刚。And there's another question of wonders if there's any way to help against feeling arrogant, or help to tame an arrogant mind.
Well, there are always ways to do that. You could think about all those that you could be pretty sure that you're not the most wisest person in the world. There are much more educated people in this world compared to yourself. There's always someone that's better than oneself, and you could think about that, and then you could think about, if you have teachers, you can think about your teachers, because when we think about our teachers, it's most likely that we will feel a little bit humbled, because if we truly do have respect towards our teachers and we do truly marvel at their qualities, naturally we will be in awe of their qualities. We will feel faith, and basically, if there is faith, there's not really any room for arrogance, for there to be arrogance, I believe.
对于刚刚对治傲慢的方法的法王子的回答，就是说我们可以经常思维我们不是最聪明的，或者是说我们不是最受过教育的人，然后有很多比我们更好的人，或者是说我们有老师或者是有上师的话，就经常思考上师或者老师的功德，然后就会自然感觉到非常的谦卑。然后我们如果真正具有信心的话也会能够帮我们对治我们的傲慢心。
And then also a traditional method that is mentioned is prostration. It is said that if you prostrate, prostration serves as a remedy towards pride or also arrogance. So when you prostrate, which I mean by body prostrations, if you prostrate to the Buddha, to your shrine, in front of your shrine, because you're prostrating and you're putting your whole body down, to the ground, it naturally helps to diminish some kind of the sense of pride or arrogance in you.
还有一个比较传统的方法，就是通过身顶礼来对治我们的傲慢心。比如说我们用我们的身体去顶礼佛，或者是去顶礼我们的佛堂，这样把我们的身体放低的话，自然也就会帮助我们对治我们的傲慢心。And there is another question that if everything is impermanent, then is Buddha nature also impermanent?
We do not necessarily say everything is impermanent, but all that is conditioned, that is everything that is born from causes and conditions in this world, conditioned existence, I guess you could say. Those are impermanent.
这里说的无常，不是说所有的一切都是无常，而是指的是因果而生的一切法都是无常的。
There are, there are people that, I mean, there are masters that have said, it varies. There are masters in the past that have said that Buddha nature is permanent. There are some that say permanent. Not really any that have said impermanent, I believe, but some say permanent, and some say, it's not really, you can't really say permanent or impermanent. It's beyond any of those conceptions.
刚刚回答的是那个如来藏是否有无常的问题。然后对于无常的话来说，也不是所有的教法当中都会说，一切都是无常。究竟来说的话，这一切法都是远离常和无常的区别。There is a question on the clarification of what is a half Buddha.
The Pratyeka Buddha, the half Buddha, is a Buddha that is, it's not a fully enlightened Buddha. It is superior to the Arahat. It is superior to the Arahat in the, you could say, in their realization. But the Pratyeka Buddha is basically a Buddha that has, not a fully enlightened Buddha, but a Buddha that has made the promise to attain, before they attain that state, they make a prayer that they will attain their enlightenment in a place where there is no fully enlightened Buddha living in the world. And they want to, they like to do things independently. They like to work independently. They do not want to rely on a teacher that much. In the beginning, of course, they would have to have received teachings from a Buddha, but eventually, they do not rely on the Buddha that much, and they attain their state at a place where there's no Buddha, at a time when there's no Buddha in the world.
这个是有一个关于辟支佛的解释的一个回答。辟支佛就是指没有彻底证悟的修行人，然后他们的境界比阿罗汉的果位更高，但他们在证悟前，他们的承诺是在佛灭度之后，通过佛的教法当中，通过自己的修行来成佛。这就是对辟支佛的一个简单的定义。
There's a mention that I believe when Shakyamuni Buddha, I think it was when he was born, many Pratyeka Buddhas that existed in the world, they gathered together at Varanasi, the place in India called Varanasi. They gathered together and they discussed, and they said that the fully enlightened Buddha to be is born, and now we don't need to be here anymore. And they all passed away right there, and then it is said they left the world.
有一个说法，就是在释迦牟尼佛诞生的时候，有许多的圆觉，也就是辟支佛，来到瓦拉纳西，也就是佛陀，就来到瓦拉纳西，在印度的一个地方。然后他们当时说，因为现在有彻悟的佛陀出世，所以我们就不再会住世。
So basically, as I mentioned, they live in a time in the world when there's no Buddha. And for example, when Shakyamuni Buddha started his teaching career, he had no disciples who were Pratyeka Buddhas. It was all either the Shravakas, or you could say Arahats or Bodhisattvas.
辟支佛是在没有佛的时候的这段期间注释的，也就是说，当佛真正开始转法轮之后，就没有了辟支佛，只有阿罗汉。
The main practice that they focus on is the 12 links of interdependent origination.
然后他们主要修行的佛法是12缘起支。
And it is on that that they meditate and focused on that, and then they attain their state, the Pratyeka Buddha attainment.
他们成佛的方法就是通过文思，通过修行12缘起支，达到辟支佛的果位。 There is a question of whether you can please further clarify on the word gnosis.
I guess you could, for now, the best way to understand that is something like, you could just understand it as being wisdom for now. I think that would be okay.
就是对一个想再解释一下 gnosis 这个词的一个问题，访问者说我们现在可以暂时理解为智慧。There is another question if wonders if we are certain that we would like to enter the land of great bliss, what kind of practice should we endow ourselves on?
Oh, that is there's several causes for being rebirth in Sukhavati, I think, which is Buddha Amitabha's Pure Land. I think that is what the question was, right? So, yeah, there are several ways to be reborn. One of the main important ways is to always continuously, as much as one can, to think of Buddha Amitabha, and to pray to be reborn there, to constantly pray. And by doing that, the prayers will be answered. And when one dies, it is believed that Amitabha Buddha or some Bodhisattvas from there, that who live there in the Buddha field, will come to you to take you there to the Buddha field.
这个是对往生极乐世界应该如何修行的回答。往生极乐世界有很多不同的因，有很多不同的方法。其中一个最重要的就是要不间断的观想阿弥陀佛祈请阿弥陀佛，然后我们的祈请以后就会使我们满愿，在我们往生的时候就会有佛从阿弥陀佛的刹土来接引我们。
For Tibetan Buddhists, we do have a practice called Poa, which is the transference of the consciousness to the Pure Land. That is the Vajrayana practice. But anyway, that is done by the teacher, the Lama, one's guru. And it is a very effective practice. However, also the traditional way of the Pure Land Buddhism, I guess all Chinese Buddhists probably would recite as Nama Amitabha. So that itself, just reciting that and thinking of Amitabha, is also very effective to be reborn in the Pure Land.
在藏地的话，有破瓦法的修法，也就是我们的意识直接投身净土。这个是密宗的修法，是要通过上师来念破瓦才能够投身，这个是非常有效的方法。传统的方法，特别是对于汉传佛教来说，都会通过念南无阿弥陀佛，观想阿弥陀佛来投身净土。And there is another question of how to refrain oneself from conducting sexual misconduct.
Well, basically, it is. You could say that it is. You do not really have to refrain from completely. When we say refrain from sexual misconduct, there are different vows that you take. It's based on the different vows. If you've taken the layperson's vows of completely refraining from sexual misconduct, then that's of course something. But it can also be just to refrain from the sexual misconduct with another person's partner. That is what most people would do. Otherwise, we're not saying that you have to completely refrain. You can take that vow of completely refraining, but it's not necessary as a layperson. But anyway, if you wish to refrain, it is good to think of the results of doing that. That if you do the sexual misconduct, then there's always going to be problems. You could be. Well, you can see all the problems of that come up on the news these days of the accusations and things like that, and how people can be jailed and get in a lot of trouble. So if you just look at that, you'll probably be afraid to even think of doing such a thing. And if not that, you can also think of the other results which are mentioned in the Buddhist teachings, such as the mistrust created among each other, between people and all that, and the disrespect that is created due to that.
对于这个如何断除邪淫的问题来说的话，法王子的回答是，根据我们手持的不同的戒律，会决定我们是否彻底的断除邪淫。比如说，如果是受出家人的戒律的话，那肯定是要彻底的断除邪淫。但是如果对于我们世界修行人来说的话，我们断除邪淫的方法可以就是思考不同的果报。比如说从邪淫的广义上来说的话，我们可以看新闻里。就了解，比如说，因为邪淫的话，就会给自己带来很多的麻烦，比如说会进监狱啊之类的，或者是想思考佛经当中佛陀所说的邪淫的果报，比如说会带来会带来不信任，或者是说对别人对自己的不尊重。
When in the Buddhist teachings, when it says refrain from sexual misconduct, in most cases it refers to refraining from sexual misconduct with someone else's partner, basically someone who is already married. But you can also take the, completely refrain from sexual misconduct. That is if you take the full and complete layperson's vows.
这个说彻底断除邪淫的话，就是在佛经里当中说的邪淫，主要是指与已经有结婚或者是已经有家庭的人发生的关系，是佛经里主要指的邪淫。但是如果要彻底的断除邪淫的话，就要手持居士戒，或者是就要通过手持戒律来做到。And there is another question wonders if one can practice the school school of the Great Plus and the Vajrayana and the Chan school of practice at the same time. One finds benefit in each, but feels very physically fatigued and believes that it takes too long, but wonder if one can practice all three at the same time.
What were the three?
The Vajrayana, the Chan school of teaching, and the practice of the teaching on Pure Land.
The first one was I didn't really understand. Is it
Vajrayana and the Chan school of teaching, and teaching on the Pure Land?
I see. Well, if you have if you wish to, you can continue. It is based on your time. Of course, you may all be busy and you have a lot of work to do, and a lot of practices is just too much. Something that you can just focus on the main one, and then even if you cannot do the rest every single day continuously, then at least you can do it on special days, time to time.
这个是根据前面说的，就是净土宗、密宗和禅宗共同的修行。法王子说，就是根据我们自己的时间的支配，如果都想要修行的话，或者是说在有特定的时间，或者是有额外的时间的话，可以再分配自己的修行。
You can just focus on one that you feel most connected to for daily practice.
或者我们也可以在我们日常的修行当中，可以选一个对我们来说，觉得最贴近我们，或者是说觉得对我们最受益的一个作为我们日常的修行。And there is another question. If you could please introduce briefly the main Dharma protector in Sakya tradition, please.
The Dharma protector, the main one is, we call him Kurgi Gombo. So basically it means the protector of the tent.
Sorry, would you mind repeating the name again, please?
So you can call it, in English, it would be protector of the tent. So the tent is, we have usually tent in the tent to live, tent to stay in, we have tents. So it is protector of the tent.
这个问题是请法王子介绍一下萨迦派主要的护法。第一个护法是是指保障护法。
It is connected to the main idam of Sakya, which is Hevajra.
这个是和萨迦的主尊有直接的联系，也就是我们之前讲的洗金刚。
Yes, so it's protector of the tent for camping, that tent. So it's protector of the tent.
也就是这个护法是，就像一个我们去露营的一个帐篷的那样的一个护法，叫保障护法。保障
It
护
is a two-armed Mahakala form.
是一个2臂的护法。And there is another question wondering if one prays to the Buddha because one is poor and wanted to, through praying, to be rich in order to benefit sentient beings, and wonders if one prays to Buddha in such way will one have their prayers be answered, or will one be able to achieve a wealthy life in order to benefit sentient beings?
That kind of prayer is good. Earlier we did mention that praying for financial success and this and that is not that great, but if it's aimed for benefiting others, if that is your wish, then that is of course good to pray in such a way. But it's hard to say that it will be answered anytime soon. It's based on your karma. It's based on if for some people the answers may be and you may pray, but it will only be answered, in this life, in the next life, in future lifetimes. Sometimes it takes a long time for the results to come. That's based on your karma. If you have a lot of obscurations and a lot of misdeeds, then it creates obstacles for the result to come around quickly. However, if you really have prayed very strongly, and if you have prayed to us, if you basically, if it's up to whether the causes and conditions for the result to appear in this life are come together or not. If the causes and conditions don't come together, then even if you pray, it will not come around immediately. It may take a very long time. However, if the causes and conditions do come together, then it will be possible for the result to come in this lifetime.
刚刚问的那个问题是，就是如果一个人很贫穷，想祈请佛菩萨得到富贵富贵的福报，再去帮助众生的这个问题。法王子的回答是说，如果通过那样的发心，是为了利益他人的发心的话，去祈请佛菩萨是可以的。就像我们之前讲过的不同的皈依的发心的动机一样。但是很难说我们会马上满愿，因为就算我们祈请的话，也还是要看我们自己的业力来决定。有可能我们的祈请下一世才会得到圆满，或者是说要很多世之后才会得到这个果报。因为每一个众生有不同的业障，以及自己之前所造过的恶业，会决定我们的果报什么时候会成熟，不一定是很快我们祈请之后马上就会得到我们所祈请的东西。但是如果说我们非常强烈的祈请的话，因为一切都是要有因有缘才能够具足。如果因缘不具足的话，祈请的话，就算很强烈的祈祷的话，也会要花很久才会能够满我们的愿望。
You could say it's up to how strong your faith is and how much effort you put into your prayers.
我们可以说通过我们有多强的信心，或者是说我们在祈祷当中花多少的心力来决定我们的愿望会不会被实现。And there is another question that wonders if we are the only one bearing the fruit of our karma or of our obstacles, then how does us generating the merit to others work? If we are the one bearing the fruit of our karma, then how does us generating our good deeds to others happen?
Well, that may seem a bit contradicting, but we do believe that by praying, that prayer has powers. So basically, by praying itself, by doing the action of praying, performing the action of praying for the sake of others, there is certainly a chance. It's not like 100% possible, but there is a chance that others can be benefited. And it doesn't mean that all of your, if you pray for the happiness of others, it doesn't mean that, all of the results of your prayers will just be, others will get it and you will be left with nothing. It doesn't mean that. Others will get it, and also you yourself will be able to experience a good result.
这个问题是问，就是如果业力只能自己受，那我们把功德回向给他人是如何发生的？房子回答是说，这个听起来是有一点矛盾，但是因为亲情有力量，我们为他人亲情的时候，我们就有这个机会或者有这个可能性。虽然不是100%，但是我们的亲情会见效。如果是为了他人的快乐亲情的话，也不是说他人就会拥有所有的快乐，我们自己什么都没有，而是如果我们诚心为他人亲情的话，我们自己也会获得利益。
For example, we can understand it as to the act of giving. So if some of you have done charity before, when you give something, an object to, if you give like food or clothing to a beggar, someone who is poor, then the object is given to others. Others will be happy. The beggar will be able to wear, now has something to wear or something to eat. And it seems like, you've given it's been given to the other person, but you also get something in return, which is the happiness. And because you've done something good, you feel good after you do the act of charity. After you do charity, you feel good. For example, I myself have, given several times. I do not get to do it that often. However, when I do give something to a beggar, maybe some money. Well, in India, they don't really say much. The Indian beggars don't do much, but the American beggars, they'll say something like, God bless you. And even though that, I'm a Buddhist, we don't really believe in God and all that. Just hearing that, it sounds nice and it makes you feel good when they say something nice in return. And it kind of makes your day, because after you do the charity, you feel good for the rest of the day. You feel like you did something that is really, really good, and you just really feel good about it. And that is, you could say that, by doing that, you have given them a happiness, and you yourself have also received happiness in return.
举一个例子来说，比如说，从布施的角度来说，我们很多人可能之前做过慈善，就比如说给乞讨者食物或者是衣物，然后因为我们给了乞讨者食物和衣物，让他们很开心，因为他们从此之后有吃穿，就看起来这个行为是我们布施给别人，但是我们自己也会从中获得快乐，我们自己也会觉得很开心。比如说，房子说他自己的话，虽然不是经常有机会做布施，但是比如在印度的话，可能乞讨者不会说什么，但是在美国的话，每一次给了乞讨者一些食物或者一些东西的话，他们都会说上帝保佑你。虽然我自己这房子说他自己是佛教徒，不相信上帝，但是听到就祈祷者这样子说的话，也会觉得很开心，就会觉得因为这一句话一天都会觉得很开心。所以我们感觉是在为别人做好事，是给了别人食物或者是衣物，但是自己也会从中获得开心和快乐。
Likewise, if you're praying, it should be something similar to that.
同样的，我们为他人祈祷也是如此。
We do also, in fact, say that Shantideva, the Indian master, said in the way of the Bodhisattva that all the happiness, all the suffering in the world comes from wishing for happiness for oneself, while all the happiness in the world comes from wishing happiness for others. So by that, we can understand that by wishing happiness for others, oneself will be happy. And also, of course, because of that, because of your wishing happiness for others, even though, since they are not making the effort on their side, it may not, a great result may not ripen on them. Still, it does, I believe, make at least a small difference. And, they will be benefited in some kind of way.
就拿刚才布施的这个例子来说，祈请也同样是如此。比如说在印度的很多圣者或者是佛菩萨也会说，所有的痛苦都是因为我们希求自己的快乐，所有的快乐都是因为我们希求别人的远离痛苦或者获得幸福。虽然我们的祈请可能不会马上在他人身上成熟，但是通过祈请的话，也肯定是有力量，而且我们自己会从中获得快乐。And there is a question similar to before, wondering if one prays to them to give them fame or to give them wealth, and thinking that after they have obtained such fame or wealth, and then they will go about liberating the sentient beings. But if the motivation was for their own fame and wealth, will they be able to achieve what they have prayed for?
Yes, it is possible. It is not impossible. It is possible to achieve what you've prayed for. However, if it's for yourself, then it won't become a cause for enlightenment. You'll just receive some benefits from that.
这个问题是说，如果为了自己的利益去祈请本尊，然后说得到自己的富贵之后再帮助他人，但是为了自己的名闻利养会满愿吗？佛菩萨法王子的回答是说，有可能会满愿，但是如果是为了自己的名闻利养去祈请的话，就不会成为解脱的因。And there is another question that wonders, since we have those digital counters that we can wear on our fingers, do we still need to use beads to count the mantras that we have been reciting or praying?
Well, in a way, the beads is kind of like the traditional kind of equipment, I guess you would say, for a Dharma practitioner. It has its meaning to have many beads, and there are reasons why there are like 108 beads on a mala, and there are many reasons. And also, when it comes to Vajrayana, we have different ways of explaining. I mean, for example, white malas can help in the action of pacifying sicknesses and all that, and then the red helps in enriching, wealth and the like, and black malas help for averting, obstacles. And we have different ways of, different malas with different colors have different purposes. So there is a significance to use malas. So yeah, you can of course use that kind of small machine that you have on your finger, but also have a mala, and it's good to use the mala time to time.
这个问题是说，如果现在已经有了计数器，还要用念珠吗？法王子的回答是说，在传统上都是用念珠，而且念珠是有特殊的意义。比如说，为什么念珠是108颗？ 从密乘的角度来讲的话，不同颜色的念珠有不同的意义。比如说，白色的就是会帮助清净病障，然后红色的就是圆满事业，或者是说，获得获得财富，然后也就是获得福报。然后黑色的话，有比如说有清净罪障的功德。所以说我们确实是可以用计数器，但是念珠也有它自己的特殊的含义。And there is another question that if anyone who practices meditation before one has generated bodhicitta or the mind of enlightenment, will one be caught up by the joy that meditation brings, and in so not wanting to help or liberate sentient beings?
Well, yeah, that could be possible. Most of the meditations of the Mahayana are mainly directed towards sentient beings, so it isn't likely that you will start getting disinterested in helping sentient beings, because all of them are for example, the most of the meditations of Mahayana, as it will come later on in the Clarifying the Sage's intent during the mention of the fifth perfection, which is the meditative perfection. It is mainly focused on loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta. So those are all directed towards sentient beings. So yeah, it's most likely that you won't be disinterested if you're really doing the meditation right.
这个问题是回答，就是在没有升起菩提心之前修禅定，会因为被禅定快乐迷惑，不想帮众生吗？反问子的回答是说有可能，但是因为大乘佛法里面的修行，或者是说大乘佛法里面所教授的禅定，都是为了帮助众生而修行的，所以所以我们在修持大乘佛法的时候，自然就会对只是获得禅悦而感到没有兴趣，就自然的会为了希望利益众生而修行。这个在之后我们讲摩尼密因显文论当中会提到。
If you're speaking about other types of meditation, not really, Mahayana, but common to both Hinayana and Mahayana, such as the impermanence or human rebirth or cause and effect of that, then you need to eventually be able to, if you're starting to feel that you're getting less and less interested in helping sentient beings, then you need to be able to connect that meditation with these sentient beings. So you need to, for example, if you're thinking of precious human birth, then when you realize how, if you're really into that meditation, you need to start thinking that, I've attained a really precious human birth. Now I should use this human birth as an opportunity to help others. And if it's impermanence, then you know that everything is changing and you're losing time each minute. So it's best to just really rush and help sentient beings while I still do have time. And if it's cause and effect, then you can think of that from good karma, from good deeds comes good results, bad deeds come bad results. I should perform good deeds. And the way I should perform that is by helping others. So you can always connect that with the sentient beings, each of those meditations.
再补充说到的话，就比如说在显宗和密宗的共同的修行当中，比如说在思考人生在思考寿命无常、轮回过患、因果不虚当中，以及人生难得的话，如果我们觉得这些修行让我们对众生或者是对众生的感受越来越远离的话，我们要经常去，或者是说对帮助众生越来越没有兴趣的话，要经常把我们的修行在与众生与众生结合起来，或者是说要在我们修行当中要经常的去结合思考众生。比如说我们在修暇满人生的时候，要思考我们现在有了如此珍贵难得的人生，那我们更加要好好利用我们这个人生去帮助众生。然后在思考寿命无常的时候，我们也可以思考我们现在人生这么的短暂，一切都在无常的变化，要更加珍惜我们的生命，要利用我们的生命去帮助众生。 在思考轮回和因果的时候，就会想到，确实是善有善报，恶有恶报。然后因为思考如此的话，就更加会让我们希望去能够帮助众生。
There are mentions of Bodhisattvas getting too deep into their meditation where they start to forget helping sentient beings, but that is on a very high level. That happens to enlightened Bodhisattvas, and that is not speaking of the first or second level, but a very high level. I don't know exactly, maybe it might be around the 8th level, 7th or 8th level. And when that happens, the Buddha is said to come to that Bodhisattva and wake them up from their meditation and tell them that they need to get back to work.
确实也有在比如说八地菩萨，就是进入深深的禅定，会陷入禅定，不思考来帮助众生。然后这种是，但是这个是境界非常高的菩萨，不是最一开始的修行，是至少指八地以上的菩萨。如果有这种情况的话，就佛陀会或者是说佛会来到那个菩萨面前，让他醒来，让他再继续回去工作，去帮助众生。
So that will happen. If that happens, it should be very much later. So I don't think we need to worry about that now.
如果如果真的要发生的话，那就是很久以后的事情，我们现在也不需要担心。And there's another question that wonders if someone out of their own desire, but they don't have the transmission, and they looked at a lot of ways of practicing online, and they would like to marry someone who is a yakashini. Isn't this a very dangerous way of practicing?
Sorry, yakashini?
Yeah. It's a yakashini.
That is a non-human spirit, I believe.
Right. So that question wonders if one out of their own desire and they don't have transmissions, but they looked at different ways of practicing online, and they would like to marry someone who is a yakashini. Isn't this a very dangerous way of practicing?
I still didn't get the question.
It's okay. We can.
I think if it means by yakshini by the non-human female spirit, then that is hard to come by, unless you have a vision to see non-human spirits.
Okay.
If that's what you're talking about, I'm not sure.
Okay. 就之前有一个问题是说，如果因为自身的欲望，然后没有传承，在网上看了很多修法，想要娶药叉女为妻的话，房子的回答是说，就是这些药叉女，因为他们也是神，就是我们如果没有特殊能力的话，也是不太容易看到。And there's a question that wonders if one hasn't been hearing about the Dharma, contemplating or practicing the Dharma without understanding the basics, but one goes about practicing Vajrayana, will one be able to attain liberation just through reciting mantras? Or is there any danger of go about practicing Vajrayana without listening to Dharma, contemplating or practicing at first?
Well, if you practice Vajrayana, there has to be contemplating and practicing. But I mean, I think the question is about the perfection vehicle before the Vajrayana, right? Meditation, hearing, contemplation, and meditation on the perfection vehicle before the Vajrayana. I think that might be the question. Because if you're practicing Vajrayana, there is always going to be contemplation and hearing and meditation. Without those three, there cannot be practice of any kind of Buddhism. So it's up to what kind of level you are on, like how your capacity, I guess you could say. If you're really smart, if you're very, very smart, super smart, then you don't need to go to the perfection vehicle. You can go straight to the Vajrayana vehicle and just attain enlightenment in this life or 7 lifetimes or anytime soon. However, if you're not that smart, then you need to go to the basics, the very basics of the perfection vehicle first, and then you can slowly, gradually go to the Vajrayana practices.
这个问题是说，如果没有文思修，然后基本教理不懂，直接修密法有危险吗？房子的回答说，这个应该是指就是我们在修行密宗之前，我们修行显宗或者是修行波罗蜜多禅的时候的一个问题。因为如果没有文思修的话，就没有办法修持密宗。但是如果我们很有能力，或者我们特别的聪明感，或者说我们具有非常成熟的根基的话，那也可以直接去入密宗。不然的话还是要通过文思修行，先通过显宗来修行，然后之后再去入密宗。
But generally speaking, we do say that by reciting mantras, there are benefits, even if you're distracted in reciting it. But there's also a good number of masters that have said that there are no benefits by reciting mantras if your mind is distracted, such as Mahasiddha Naropa.
然后第二部分的问题就是只靠持咒会获得解脱吗？就是说，就算我们以散乱心去念咒的话，也是有功德的。但是当然也有一些上师说，如果心是散乱的话，那念咒就没有功德。And there's another question that wonders if one practices the practice of Skywalker or Dakini, can one be reborn into the great land of bliss?
By this, are they referring to a particular yidam, like Kandrama?
He or she didn't specify a particular idam, but just wonder if one practices the practice of a Skywalker or Dakini in general, can one be reborn into the land of great bliss?
I guess that they probably mean the practices of a Dakini. So if that is the case, there are sadhanas sadhanas are practice manuals based on Dakinis. Dakinis is, female skywalkers. So yeah, they can be reborn in the pure land. For example, we have in the Sakya we have Vajra Yogini, which is a female idam. It can be considered a Dakini, and if you practice her practice, you can be reborn in her pure land.
这个问题是说，如果修空性母的法能往生，极乐世界阿弥陀佛净土嘛？法王子说，有修空性母的仪轨，然后可以投身净土。比如说在大家派当中有修瑜伽母的仪轨，可以投身净土。
But there are Dakinis or skywalkers. They are both enlightened and non-enlightened. There are some Dakinis that are skywalkers that are harmful. They are not enlightened and cause harm to actually cause obstacles and harm to practitioners. So of course, I'm pretty sure they don't mean by relying on those. But if it's on enlightened, if you're relying on the enlightened Dakinis, then of course you can be reborn. And in most cases, it is Dakinis that that escort you to a pure land when you die.
对于这个所修持的空性母来说，也有正悟和没有正悟的空性母，有一些是会伤害众生的，会带来危险。但是对于一般投身净土的众生来说，也是由正悟的空性母来接引众生投身净土。There's another question wonders what is the story or the history behind the Shakamunia's scripture behind you, as it looks very great to us.
That is, it is known as Tupuang Zamling Yeshak. So I don't know how should we translate that into English. Tupuang means the Buddha or the the Muni or the able sage. And then Zamling means the world, and Yeshak means put it on the right side. So you could say that if you combined all of the riches in the world together, all of the precious minerals or riches in the world together, and you just cut it in, you just divide it into 50-50, this statue is equal to that 50%, the preciousness of the statue is equal to that 50% of all of the riches in the world.
For the Shakyamuni statue behind you?
Yes.
They were wondering, okay. 法王子就是这个对于就是法王子背后的释迦牟尼佛像的这个故事的来历的简单的解释，就是法王子说这是一个非常殊胜的释迦牟尼佛像，就是如果说我们把世界上所有的珍宝都聚集在一起，然后把它对半分的话，背后的这个佛像就具有50%的这个世界上所有的珍宝的这个庄严的功德。
So it is in Sakya, Tibet. So in Sakya we have the northern monastery and the southern monastery. The northern monastery is the place where all of the Vajrayana practices are done. And in the southern monastery, the northern monastery is on the hill, the Sakya hill itself, while the southern monastery is on the ground, on the plain ground. And the northern monastery does not exist anymore, but the southern monastery still does. If you have seen photos of Sakya, Tibet, there's a big square kind of shaped monastery. This Buddha statue is the main statue in that temple.
Sorry, the northern one is where the Vajrayana practice is
Yes.
Or is that the southern one? Okay, the northern one.
The southern monastery is a place where all the Sutrayana or perfection vehicle practices are done.
法王子说在藏地的萨迦寺里面也有一尊非常殊胜的这个释迦牟尼佛的佛像，然后在藏地的话，就是分为南北，然后至于南部的话就是在山丘上的那些寺庙，然后在北部的话就是在平地上的，然后在南部的话都是一些显宗的教法，然后在北部的话都是密宗的教法。
So the southern monastery was founded in the 13th century, and this monastery was founded by the 7th Sakya teacher known as Drogön Chogyal Papa. So he was the 7th Sakya teacher and also the ruler of Tibet.
然后就是之前说的是萨迦的南寺和萨迦北寺，然后萨迦南寺的话是由萨迦的二祖所建立的。
And it was sponsored, the founding of this monastery and the statues were sponsored by Kublai Khan. So basically it was funded by the Yuan dynasty.
在萨迦南寺的创立者是在元朝由成吉思汗所创立。
So in Lhasa we have the Jokang, the Jo Shakyamuni, which is the most important Buddha statue in Tibet. So this statue that is in my background, which is the main statue in Sakya, is considered the second most holiest Buddha statue in Tibet, after the Lhasa Buddha statue.
不好意思，前面说的不是成吉思的，是忽必烈。然后，法王子背后的这一尊释迦牟尼佛像也是除了刚刚说的那一尊之外，第二殊胜的一尊佛像，在萨迦寺，在萨迦派当中。
So after the 6th Sakya teacher, who is Sakya Pendita and is the author of our the current work that we are studying, after he passed away, his disciple, the 7th Sakya teacher, Drogön Chogyal Papa, also known as Papa or Pakspa, he erected this statue in memory of his guru, Sakya Pandita. So in here, in the statue, is the remainings, the clothes, and the relics of Sakya Pandita as well.
然后在房子背后的这尊佛像是在萨迦六祖，也就是我们现在就是萨迦班智达，我们现在学习的这个论点的作者之后的传承，也就是他的侄子848。这个佛像当中有装有了就之前萨迦六祖的所有的衣物等。And there's another question: if one practices very well, will one be able to have the Dharma protector or the Dakini come to them automatically without praying to them?
Yes, that is for sure. Not just Dharma protectors, yes. Dharma protectors and all of the beings, the supernatural beings that like the Dharma, that support the Buddha Dharma, it is said that they will protect you. It is later on during the benefits of the refuge, it will be mentioned that if you take refuge in the 3 jewels, you will be protected by all of the gods and all of the supernatural beings who support the Dharma. You'll be protected by them. And of course, no need to say the Dharma protectors because that is their job.
这个问题是，就是如果修行比较好的话，是不是不用特地祈请，会自动感召空心母和护法前来护持？法王子说这个是肯定的。就是护法或者是神，他们本身就是为了来保护或者是来支持修行人的。我们之后会讲的这个牟尼密显明论当中，皈依的功德当中也有这样的一部分的内容。更加不用说是修持或者是修行佛法的人，肯定是会受神灵或者是受护法的保护，而且护法本身的作用就是为了保护和护持修行人。I think that might be all the questions we have for today, unless there's more questions.
Baden Zawe Lama Rinpoche Dagi Chiburo Beme Denshuan Gajen Chembe Gune Jesund Kuson Togi Ngeju Zadu So Chebe Meshe Song We Guru Kana Chime Tse Je Lamo Chen Due Mam 前面在老王为操那一，前面在因为主咋多说，人算白面多给拉拉呢，现在你的让所你莫去，啥的龙多白咋给在呢？ Tu jali shi gu du da de so ma wang gyu zhu la ri kuen ge dong zhu ge ga ze te jen do ma lam bian de ba du ba la we jin de jen san be wang yi ga bo sha de so nam da chen de se re ge sa xie la te sama guan be rin chen du ma zi xie zi zong dan jie de ba ri me ge kya cho ri wang liang bu lo de shu so kya wa ni ba jie zi kong ma ni kya den ji du ni ge 在马西教月朗萨萨摩罗皮那么教我起先等在小点所品作教西定义这些巴的萨给去些巴拉巴拉呢做咱们在被 见多群群先上送多见， Da de so lu me la ma cho sum tu je da ye dam de so gya tsun tu do dang che nye sa mo gyuro me den be tu che da so we de den ju gyuro chi Nama Diye Tam Je Se Pa Nye To Me Nye Be Jana Pam Je Ne Ke Ka Na Che Ba Lon Chu Pa Ye Se Be So Le Jo Wa Shu Cha pa la pa wu che ta la ke pa ta gun do san po te yang te shin te ta gun ge che su ta la jin ge wa de da tam je ra du sumo shebe yawa tamche ye mo wa kala chodo nga ba de da ge we sa wa de ku kya sang bo ju ji ra do mo wa ra ge Joy Gyowe Gyoba Chokyo Pai Kedro Gyatse Yonso Kawe Ne Kari Chede Tenba Satse Pa Sakya Pa Ye Tenba Gegruji Chen Pegi Dewa Doji Deba Den Sakye Chuse Bagruji Chube Dongi Yunche Meba Dang Gun Yang Chile Namka Nyamba Shu. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you.
See you 2 weeks later.
Vasu Tujiche.